Greetings to you all from the magnificent city of Riga once again. And I'm on the corner of Brīvības, which is probably the main street crossing through the center of Riga, and Stabu. And the reason why I'm here is because of that beautiful Art Nouveau building behind me. Now locally it's known as the Corner House. But for those of you who are not local and don't know what the Corner House is, well, that used to be the headquarters of the Riga KGB, or as pronounced in Russian, KGB, which is Komitet Государственной Безопасности, which actually means the Committee for State Security. Now the organization was initially founded as the Cheka in 1917, but in 1953, just a few days after Stalin's death, it was renamed the KGB. And today, we're visiting this place. Now we've been given this unique opportunity to literally walk around the building and do what we please. That doesn't usually happen. And I'm really grateful to the guys here to let me do this. And I just want to show you that once upon a time, that street right there, the main Brīvības street, this building, the entrance would have been from here. And as you can see, like most Art Nouveau buildings, it's very regal, very luxurious. The ceiling makes a statement full of little details. But the truth of the matter is, the rest of this building and where the prisoners would have come in is completely different. Let me show you. So it would all begin right here, through this archway, which is on the Stabu side of the building. And I can only imagine what the newly arrested people that would pull up here as these gates would open must have felt. You know, the reputation the KGB had. I think they knew that they were about to embark on a living nightmare just through there. So guys, this would have been the first point of entrance into the building for anyone whose misfortune was to end up here. And they would all come through that very door, through that courtyard. The truck would bring them in through this very door and be sat here for registration at this desk. And apparently the receiving officer would greet them with a big knife and cut off all their buttons off their shirts and remove their belts and strip them naked, place the clothes right here on the desk, and all their belongings would be placed in these drawers right here, awaiting their fate. If they were released, they'd get their belongings back. That apparently didn't happen too often. And if they were convicted, then it became property of the state. And here you can see some of the people that may have come through this room. And oftentimes, their fate is not known. Let's keep going. So the next stop, guys, would have been a room like this, or this actual room. And this is an interrogation room. And after their registration, they'd be sent here. And I hear some horrendous stories about torture in order to get information out. Now what you have to realize is that these were not common criminals, these were not rapists, these were not bank robbers, they weren't murderers. Most of the prisoners that came through here, or the criminals, if you like, that came through here, were more like political prisoners, you know, that were accused of doing something against the state. And they wanted to process them really fast, so their methods of torture, you can imagine, were very primitive. There's talk about, you know, slamming people's hands in drawers. I mean, they've got this rubber truncheon here, which I can imagine. I mean, I just did that. That is painful. I don't know how long a person could withstand this kind of brutality And the idea was that the Checker officer or the KGB officer would ultimately want a signed confession, a written signed confession, which by the way was written by the officer himself. So the objective here was really just to get a signature of the guys that were being interrogated. And right through there, you can see, just like in the movies, this is a mirror. But on the other side, I don't know how good the lighting is here, but on the inside, no light. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a double-sided mirror. One thing I want to point out is that the decor here is very much typical of the Soviet era. This wallpaper looks so common from the 1970s Soviet Union. You know, something you would have found in someone's apartment. But as we very well know, that in those days there wasn't much variety, including this green paint that is so common, this Soviet green paint. And these railings here, very interesting, they run all along here. And basically, if you notice, when you press on them, they're flexible. And what this would have been is basically, if a checker needed assistance, help, if things got out of hand, all you would do is press this down, it would sound off an alarm, and assistance could come in right away. Which now brings us, after the interrogation, into the cell areas, the holding cells. So guys, I'm sat in a holding cell, what would have been known as a sabachnik, or translated into kind of like the doghouse. And because sabaka means dog in Russian. And I've got the door open. I can leave whenever I want. And I'm telling you, just being sat here, I get this uneasy feeling. I mean, it's not much wider than I am. And they held people here for as long as 3 days. And as I said, I'm free to leave and I'm feeling already like claustrophobic. I can only imagine having the door shut, not knowing what my fate would be, not knowing whether I would ever leave this place alive. It must be some kind of torment that is beyond comprehension. So after being held in the sabachniks for up to 3 days, they would then be placed in these kind of cells, and a convicted person could stay as long as 6 months in one of these. And I tell you, they haven't done anything to them. All the walls are original. So they would have actually slept on these beds without mattresses. They would have been given blankets, but no mattresses. So this is what it would have felt like. And even though there are 2 beds in this one, believe me, a lot more than 2 people slept in these rooms. Let me show you. So I'm in a bigger cell here that has actually 4 beds. But I'm told that as many as 26, 27 people would inhabit this room at a time. And you can see right here, this is a picture from 1941, that the beds would have been placed like this so as more people could fit, and they would actually be given blankets, but no mattresses. And right here, guys, this bowl, or this bucket rather, would have served as a toilet for 26 people, and it was emptied once a day. As you can see right here, they had these peeping holes. They have them there, and they have them right here in the doors. And I'm told that back in the day, the floor here would have been lined with red carpet to muffle any noise. So, whilst you were being held, you would never know what spying eyes were staring at you. So a prisoner typically would spend 23 hours and 40 minutes out of the day cooped up in one of these. And they had 20 minutes of yard time. Let me show you. I'll tell you what, guys. I'm looking for the outdoor areas where they would have exercised. And I'm lost. And I'm telling you, just being lost in this place, knowing I can get out, knowing that there are people upstairs that I could call for help, still makes me feel very uneasy. Right? The musty smell. And they have bunk beds too. And apparently, the heating ran here all the time, all year round, non-stop. So you can imagine a cell of 27 people sleeping anywhere they could, sharing a bucket as a toilet that was emptied once a day. And shit, I am lost. Sharing a bucket that was emptied once a day, and the heating would be on constantly. Winter, summer, doesn't matter. It would actually be about 30 degrees in those rooms, which I just don't know how to even describe it. Inhumane. So, guys, this would have been the yard where all the prisoners were entitled to 20 minutes a day. And as you can see, there are two of them that are separated by this wall and this metal door. And the reason why they have two, because a lot of times people would be arrested together. Might be relatives, might be co-workers, and anybody that knew another person, they wanted to keep them apart. They didn't want them to communicate at all. I'm not sure if I'm allowed up there, but let's have a look. It's open. And I guess a checker guard would be here watching over, making sure that first and foremost the prisoners were well intimidated, and secondly making sure they weren't getting up to no good in their opinion. Now above me you can see right there another wooden platform that was built, and that was purposefully done to prevent the neighboring buildings from seeing what was happening in this building. Because obviously there are many buildings around that are as tall as this, and with the stuff going on in here, I'm sure they wanted it kept secret. But they say that, well, there's a joke actually, talking about tall buildings, that this building used to be the tallest building in Riga. It was known as the tallest building in Riga because from here you had a view to Siberia. And even though it's a joke, it's a very sad joke because it was a reality for many, many people. So this, guys, right now we're in the kitchen, and this is where the food for the criminals would have been prepared. And you would have had, or you have, these two massive, I don't even know what this is. I mean, wood goes under there, you heat it up, and these are like built-in huge saucepans where the food would have been prepared. Now apparently they got 3 meals a day. Now for breakfast and dinner, that would have been a slice of bread and some warm water. And at lunch, apparently they would have had salty fish soup, really watered down, that was prepared in these kettles, and apparently they were rarely cleaned out properly. So all the water was heated in here. So whenever prisoners would receive their water, common complaint was that it always tasted of fish. And look at these aluminium plates for the inmates to eat on. Wow. Now the ladies that prepared the food apparently were, you know, it wasn't prepared by women that were employed to do this. They weren't part of the checker. They weren't prisoners. These were criminals that would come in, and this would be their job, to come and cook for the inmates here. So let's keep going. And guys, it's so nice of these guys to let us in here. I wonder how tall I was. 170. More cells. Now this room behind me, which once would have been separated by a wall and a door, and all that we have left now is this original, typical, classical leather, communist Soviet door, would have led us into the worst fate and the worst outcome anybody could end up with from coming to this place. Now, just in 1941, the first year that the Soviet Union occupied Latvia, there are as many as 188 recorded deaths in this very building. And there's a list of them right there. And a few photographs here of the people that would have met their fate right here in this very room. And this, guys, would have been the firing range. Now, the Soviet Union occupied Latvia from 1940 to 1941. Then they had a 3-year break up until 1944, where the Germans occupied Latvia. At which point the Russians, or the Soviets, liberated Latvia from the Germans, but never really gave them their freedom. They stayed here for the next 50 years. And this wall right here is the place where people would have been executed. And if you notice, all these stickers, the reds, the yellows, they represent bullet holes. The yellow ones are clear bullet holes. The red ones are bullet holes that tried to be covered up. But you can see they're in all directions. There are some that are really high. Most of them, you will see, are at this height. But a lot of them are spread high and low, because I can imagine that part of the torture procedure would have been to shoot, avoid the person, just to stress them out even more. And this would have been the worst fate for any person coming here. The best fate would be released, but even the people that were released suffered unbelievable torture. Others would have been sent to the gulags or to prisons in, different parts of the Soviet Union. And ultimately, when their day was done of executions, a truck would have been here that apparently they kept going during the executions, revving the engine to muffle out the sound of the shooting so the people on the inside wouldn't freak out too much. And they would load up the bodies, and then they would drive away, and nobody knows what happens to them after that. So the trucks transporting the bodies away would have left from right here, the exact same place that the trucks that were bringing in the prisoners would enter the building. And I tell you, I've left there now and I still have a feeling of unease. And I can only imagine what it must have felt like for any prisoner being captured, being driven through those gates and being taken through the whole process, not knowing what their fate would be, is beyond belief, really. And I have first account testimony, if you like. I have a friend, he's an older gentleman, and during the 1970s he was actually held here at this facility, and he was interrogated, and he said some of the techniques they used were absolutely inhumane. And they had him on one of the higher floors interrogating him, and they threatened to throw him out the window, and they actually they showed him how they grabbed a person and threw them out the window. And he knew that he was being intimidated, and it was all for show, because he remembers when he was about 5 or 6 years old, one of his neighbors fell out their window, and he lived in a high-rise, and he remembers the sound of that impact. And apparently what was happening here, they were doing it for show. They had these kind of like acrobatic nets in the courtyard, and they would throw, you know, fellow Cheka or KGB officers out the window to really put on the pressure during the interrogation times. I don't know if any of this is true. I was told this story, but judging by what I've seen in there now, it seems to stack up. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. And for me, I tell you, spending the day here really had an impact on me. And I think first and foremost, it made me appreciate and value the freedoms that I have, that I take for granted on a day-to-day basis. And honestly, that's something that we really must protect. And I can't say that I feel truly confident that they're not being threatened right now, or at least not for the last couple of years. And I personally think that it's something we need to fight for. It's something that we need to preserve, our rights and our freedoms. And I want to thank these guys that run this place, that made this possible. And I'm going to link all the details in the description below. And if you're ever in Riga, I urge you, come and visit these guys. Help keep this place open. The ticket doesn't cost much, but it's well worth a visit. You won't regret it. And at this point, I want to thank you for watching. And remember, enjoy your journey.